Hey cadets, have your friends been bothering you about Web3 and it turns out they want you to buy their NFTs? You're seeing headlines left and right about smart contracts, virtual reality, metaverses, cartoon monkeys, and rug pulls. Is this all one thing? What the hell happened to Web 1 and Web 2? Is Mark Zuckerberg right, or has he gone off the deep end? And final question. Would anyone like to buy a crypto dick butt from me? Anyone? It's super rare, I promise. To put it simply, Web3 is a theory for the next stage of the internet and more specifically, how we use it to organize ourselves, our communities, and our money. If that seems a little nebulous, it helps to consider the earlier stages, aptly named Web 1 and Web 2.
Cryptonauts.
If you were alive in the 90s to early 2000s, you'll likely remember Web 1. The short answer is that Web 1 was basically a collection of fancy billboards. Sites were static and read-only. You had the ability to put up a site, choose the text and design, maybe even add some extra pages around to click on, but that was it. Unsurprisingly, the main players here were companies, using websites to display static, official information that could be updated manually as it went. This was especially true in the early 90s, where hosting your own website required owning both a computer and your own server. This dynamic started to change as free hosting sites came onto the scene like AngelFire and Yahoo GeoCities. And for the first time, any average person could throw up a site, slap their name in animated sparkly word art, and set their favorite Usher song on autoplay. This was one of our first social networks and gave us a glimpse into the next stage of web development.
You've got mail.
Quick recap of Web 1. Business company centered, static, read-only pages, AngelFire, GeoCities were technically Web 1.5. On to Web 2. This is probably the version of the internet most of us are familiar with, as it's been considered the dominant stage of the internet evolution from the early 2000s until now. Early developments included instant messaging, blogs, and podcasts as we discovered new ways to connect and talk to each other. But were we just talking to each other, or were we creating content for one another? The keyword for Web 2 is user-generated content, or UGC. While there are many smaller apps and social networks, much of the shift is attributed to the 3-year span of 2003 to 2006 when MySpace, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter arrived. Companies and founders figured out that centralized social networks could attract millions upon millions of daily users. Not only would users show up, but they'd even make their own content to fill the pages. All the companies had to do was sort it by what we were interested in to keep us hooked. Somewhere along the line, once we filled these centralized networks up to the brim and their use became every single day, these companies also realized that they could sell our data and use it to sell ads back to us. This was the key turning point that turned Web 2 from the burst.com bubble into the greatest bull run of our lifetimes. This dynamic still dictates our online lives today, describing at least in some way the experience of being on a Reddit thread or checking your Apple Watch, all the way to Twitch streams and your Uber rides. The lessons they learned about centralized platforms and the sheer scale of the human race have been applied to everything. Literally everything. How much data do you think your smartwatch, smart car, smart thermostat, smart mattress, and smart fridge pulls from you every day? And where does it all go? Companies like Amazon, Uber, Lyft, Airbnb are probably the most notable in learning the lessons of centralized platforms plus scale. It's not just content or data. Our homes, cars, and businesses are the free meat for shiny tech middlemen. It is important to note that even though Web 2 is often described as community-centered because of the ways in which we self-organized, think about subreddits on Reddit, Facebook pages, or how influencer fans organize. One of the key factors is that all of this happens on centralized platforms. Even though you might have built your own brand on Instagram, TikTok, or Twitch, the ultimate power, cash flow, and ownership is still controlled by the platform and the private company that runs it. So, quick recap of Web 2. Community-centered, centralized platforms / social networks, user-generated content, paying for this content and convenience with your personal data. So, where do we go from here? The short answer for Web 3 would probably be ownership, but in all honesty, we're not quite there yet. The issues with Web 1 were its static nature, lack of features, and to some extent, how difficult it was for companies to extract money from users. Those issues were addressed gradually from Web 1 to Web 2, but left us with issues of over-centralized platforms having too much control over content and an imbalance of how much value is created by everyday users versus value extracted for companies and executives. Which leaves us with two visions of what Web 3 might become. How it looks, VR, metaverse, and how money moves, blockchain. If we look back at our timeline, it feels a lot like Web 1.5 or that transitionary period when YouTube was still adless and poking was the best reason to be on Facebook. Not anymore. We have some early technology that might show what our online lives look like in the future, but we haven't put it all together yet. The advent of blockchain offers a glimpse into what a more direct and transparent form of ownership might look like. Companies run as decentralized autonomous organizations, or DAO, where governance is determined by tokens or how much you use a service. Playing a game that rewards you with tokens that you can trade for real money, play to earn. An NFT being your ticket to exclusive events or perks. The ability to create an anonymous persona, purely off the art that you like to collect. These are all things you could go participate in right now, but in practical terms, all you'd likely be doing is investing in NFTs or altcoins and joining a Discord server. But even in this muted Web 2.5 world, there are scores of traders, artists, developers, and marketers who've made a new living in this new dynamic. There's movement toward the use of blockchain and NFT technology for things like sports and concert tickets, even your ID, medical records, medical history, deed to your house. You could put patents on the blockchain. But at the moment, most people are probably just hoping to sell their anime avatar for a house. And in a similar fashion, the metaverse has similarly ambitious goals, with talk of our lives moving further and further online, refueled by buzzy headlines and Zuck's obsession. In many ways, the move does seem inevitable. Our online lives now might seem alien to humans just a few decades prior, and the same can likely be said about what our daily online experience will look like ahead a few decades. But at the moment, the metaverse only exists as plots of land to be bought and sold as NFTs, a gold rush for land that can't really be utilized for much more than building voxels and minigames. For now, even VR seems stuck in the mud. The first modern headset was created in 2011, and we're still miles away from the technology being a household staple like a television or a computer. Recent studies and plenty of anecdotal evidence also points to long-term use of these headsets to be uncomfortable and fatiguing. VR and AR seems to be the next logical step from our 2D computer screens, but their implementation isn't far along yet, and we can't really proclaim that revolution. But the fact remains, Web 2 today would look like science fiction to people even in Web 1.5. If we're optimistically in Web 2.5, it only rings true that the next stages of the internet evolution might look equally alien or impossible to us. And despite the roadblock that is this generational bear market, the communities surrounding these early technologies and organizations are still thriving and bustling, full of developers and artists continuing to push what is possible. If you think you have an eye for the next big thing, there's a huge potential if you can see something the rest of us are missing. Quick recap of Web3. It's individually centered, personal ownership, decentralized platforms, and the transition from Web 2 is still not complete. So there you have it. What do you guys think? What is Web 3 to you? I think everyone has their own definition, so I would love to hear it from you guys. Let us know in the comments. Like and subscribe if you like this type of video. Until next time, hodl, secure crypto, and may Satoshi and Vitalik be with you always.